It's so nice to meet you, Taylor.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me on.
Nice to meet you. We met on Twitter
We did.
at the writing community, and I really got interested in you because you do the things on Monday where you edit other people's work.
Yeah.
Well, what's that? What's that? I mean, is that your job, or have you done that before?
Well, I just feel like the writing community has given me so much as a writer. And once I started querying, I realized that there weren't too many resources for people to help each other. I mean, you could find out via word of mouth.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
So once I found my agent, I just decided that I would start offering free query critiques. Queries are so difficult if you don't know quite what you're doing, or if you haven't read all the information out there. And by the way, if you haven't been doing it for a couple of months already, I think it can be really confusing.
So confusing to me because I have no idea. I want to write, but then I join the writing community and all these new things like Pit Mad.
Well, hold on, I'm gonna put up my witch hood. We're gonna get
into it. Talk about your costume. Talk about your costume.
I'm in my costume.
Yeah. What is this, a mask? Does it mean something, or?
No, this is just Pinterest's interpretation of witchy. I kind of agree. I think it's very cool. But yeah, I feel like queries are really challenging. I had the really amazing experience of working on my query with Query Shark, Janet Reed, who is an agent. So I got kind of a front row seat to what agents like, and as much as I can, I want to help other people because it's such a difficult process. So.
Well, that's the other thing too. How do you get an agent? Like, what's the steps for that?
So basically,
right?
Yeah. So once you finish your book, you polish the manuscript and you get a bunch of readers. And once you're done with that, then you write the query letter and your synopsis and whatever, and you research all of the agents in your genre and you start essentially cold querying. You send them a query letter, sometimes with a sample, sometimes without, and eventually, hopefully, you get an offer. Right. For me, it took 8 months, which is pretty quick. I just got lucky, honestly. My agent is amazing.
Your book's really good, that's why.
Thank you.
First sentence, you're like, okay, she's got me. A lot of it too is that first sentence gotta grab you.
Yeah, I think that the first 10 pages are really the most important.
Oh, good.
And then like the first 50, if your reader isn't hooked by then, they're probably gonna put the book down. And I think we've all experienced this in a bookstore when we pick up a book and we read it and we're like, oh, this could be interesting. But if you get past a certain page and you're still not feeling it, or it's not super interesting, you're probably gonna put the book down. So it happens obviously to professional writers and of course to querying writers too. Yeah.
I'm pretty far. I'm chapter 16. I didn't quite finish it.
Oh, you're pretty far.
Yeah, and I'm totally hooked. And I'm reading and I'm going, is she from Iceland? Is she the writer? She's speaking about herself. You totally have me hooked in there. And I know you're a professional writer, just the way, the speed of the book, the way you transition, and the character is very deep.
Thank you.
You feel drawn into her mind because her mind is constantly going. I bet your mind is too, huh?
Yeah. Catherine is just one of those very flawed but very real characters. My goal was to make her kind of as realistic as possible. That's not always the goal with writing, but for me, I think the narrative for Nornakona works best when the character is somebody you might meet any day of your life. So
something related to her. I thought she was one of my roommates in college for sure.
That was the goal, so I'm glad it worked. Um, but Nornakona is my first book. Well, not really. My first book will never see the light of day, like everybody else's first book. It was a terrible historical fiction called The Fading Light of Day. And I learned a lot writing it, and I'm happy I did it. I started to query it, and I realized that wasn't my genre.
So
Yeah.
How did you figure out your genre? How did you figure that out?
So during writing The Fading Light of Day, there was a scene that was pretty close to what we'd consider to be a horror scene. And it was the best scene in my book, like for sure. Everything else is awful. But I really liked the mode of horror. And one night I had a little bit too much wine, and I was sitting outside with my husband, and he said something like, "Did you know that the adult version of a tooth fairy would be called the Bone Witch?" And I was like, Bone Witch? I could write a book about that. So I fast drafted Nornakona in about a month and a half. And then I spent 3 or 4 months really editing. I have an amazing critique partner. His name is Alex. Hey, Alex. He's probably going to watch this and get mortified.
Is he your partner editing, or what did...
So my critique partner gets my work when it's almost done. And he's really like, he assesses my work for its overall impact and value. This isn't like the stage at which we're finding typos. This is like when the book is conceptually done and we have to figure out whether or not it's effective and like whether the sentences are the right structure. So it takes us a really long time. Typically we go through it together twice. And we pass books like this all the time. He's also agented, but we both got agented while being each other's critique partners, which is really nice. So we were on the journey together.
What kind of critique partner? Is that from school or?
No, actually we found each other through PitMad in December 2020. He offered to help me with my pitches. I helped him with his. We continued talking, and the rest is history. We're very good friends. We talk all the time, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome.
PitMad and querying, are they the same thing?
Kind of. So PitMad is one of the avenues to query. So there are these pitch parties on Twitter, which are really helpful if you want to kind of rush up through the slush pile. And basically you put out a pitch with hashtags for your audience, whether it's YA, children's, picture books, for example, or adult, which is mine, and the genre, so horror, but all the genres are in it typically, romance, fantasy, sci-fi, all of them. So you're allowed to pitch 3 times in the period, I think it's 9 to 6 or 9 to 5.
Yeah, it's like office hours.
Yeah, basically, to make it as inconvenient as possible. And if an agent likes your tweet or a small publisher likes your tweet, then that's basically an invitation to query them, which is great. That's not how I found my agent. I found my agent through the slush pile. I cold queried her back in December 2020, actually. And so right around the time I met Alex. Yeah.
That helps too. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, have you always wanted to be a writer?
No, actually, I was in academia before, which sounds very puffed up, but it really wasn't. And then I owned a brewery for 3 years.
What?
And yeah, I was the owner, the accountant, the janitor, the brewmaster, the everything. And then I had 2 kids and realized that I probably shouldn't be working in alcohol. And during the pandemic, right at the beginning, I signed up for a writing class, and the writing instructor, his name is Vance Bryceland, he said, you know, Taylor, you should keep writing. I think you could do this. And
I definitely think
I kept writing. The class got shut down, but I spend, I don't know, like 8 hours a day in this room, 8 to 10, depending on the day, writing. This is where you'll find me. 90%.
That's how you have to write. You have to write like that, 8 to 10 hours. No one will disturb you. So I've gotten to the point where I can have an hour or two to myself, but not 8 yet. So I'm waiting for that. And I saw your birthday's Gemini, and so Geminis are very good communicators.
I hope I'm a communicator.
So good. And then you must have a lot of things going on in your head too, because to write the book that quickly and fluently and
I think for me, if I don't get the idea down quickly, it's probably not going to happen. So I typically take anywhere between a month to 2 months to write a book, and then the majority of the time is spent editing. That's the way to do it. Yeah. Honestly, writing is rewriting. And when you're a professional writer, you really have to get comfortable with the editing process, because your agent is going to be an editor. That's basically their job, aside from marketing you. And then if you ever get a book deal, you're working with an editor at a publishing house. So it's basically just all editing. So getting used to it now is ideal.
I've been watching master classes, and just like one of the master class teachers, they say the same thing. You gotta write and you have to do editing.
Yeah.
Some of it is editing.
Editing is very challenging because it requires you to kind of put aside your ego and say, okay, if I have to delete this entire chapter, that's what it's gonna take. You just have to do it.
And how did you come up with your story?
Nornakona.
Yeah.
So Nornakona is basically about a lost woman who travels to Iceland to meet her future. Basically, that's what the story is about.
So that's your query right there.
That's my hook. And she kind of gets more than she bargains for, right? So a lot more than she bargains for. So she gets trapped into this love triangle with these two very strong, different women. Anna, who is kind of seductive and forward and everything that Catherine wishes she could be. And Sigrun is kind of the prototypical love interest. She's soft and gentle, but she, if you get far enough in the book, has some secrets too. Yeah. So, and so how did I come up with this idea? Honestly, I'm not sure.
Were you visiting Iceland, or did you visit Iceland because of the idea?
So the setting of the book is actually the setting of my academic studies. I studied Icelandic Saga and folklore, and I spent a lot of time in Iceland. We usually go there twice a year. We've been there 15 times, 16 times. We're going back in October.
You have family there, or does...
No, we just kind of fell in love with it.
The hot springs?
I'm sorry?
Are there hot springs there?
Oh yeah, lots of hot springs. It's really unlike any place on earth. It's beautiful and pristine and wonderful. The people are incredibly nice.
You described it so well.
Thank you. That was my biggest goal for the book, was to describe Iceland accurately, because I think a lot of the time it can be made into maybe something it's not, or it's made to be like more mystical than it is. Iceland is really just an island built on volcanic ash. It's gorgeous, and it can be the setting for a spooky story, but it's just a country. If you haven't been, you should go. It's amazing.
I've been wanting to go because of the hot springs.
Oh yeah.